Alrighty, we are going to start tonight actually with a reading from C.S. Lewis because actually the next two lessons almost perfectly overlap. So it's really nice for us. They're going to deal with kind of rounding out the passive system of verbs. So we're going to do that basically the same review we did last week, or last month rather, but see how much of that is now getting produced by your own minds rather than just kind of my mind. And then this week and the next week we'll also basically do a pretty extensive review of the ablative and introduce the fourth and fifth declensions, which is just straight memory work. So it's nothing different at all, it's just new endings. So anyway, so we're going to start with C.S. Lewis. This is from his autobiography of his young life called Surprised by Joy. And anyway, in it he talks about basically his wandering away from the church and through his family and losing his mom and his dad basically never being there and never listening to him. And it's really kind of troubling to hear him talk about his dad and kind of imagining those rooms with kind of the conversations where his dad is, he's talking about, say, a buddy from World War I, and his dad's just oblivious to what he's talking about and kind of an argumentative spirit in his dad, or maybe that was just him as a young man, I don't know. But anyway, he talks about his schooling and some of the lousy teachers he had, but then some of the especially excellent teachers he had. And there are two in particular. The one he said was his master of grammar and rhetoric, so who really taught him to read Latin carefully. And the other, he calls him, what does he call him? Smoogie. So there you go, apparently. So Smoogie was kind of his master of grammar and rhetoric, who taught him, to quote Lewis, "The reader who misses syntactical points in a poem is missing aesthetic points as well." So if you're not able to follow a poem's order and structure, then you're not going to be able to see its beauty. So those things are intimately bound up with each other. And then his other teacher that Chris has mentioned before, which is the great Knock, his master of ruthless dialectic is what he calls it. So anyway, ruthless. I haven't been called ruthlessly yet. I'd like to accomplish that someday. So anyway, talking about Smoogie and his reading. So he says, I think he's about 14 at this point. So he says, "In those days, a boy on the classical side," so if you were studying classics, "a boy on the classical side officially did almost nothing but classics. I think this was wise. The greatest service we can do to education today is to teach fewer subjects. No one has time to do more than a very few things well before he is 20. And when we force a boy to be a mediocrity in a dozen subjects, we destroy his standards, perhaps for life. Smoogie taught us Latin and Greek, but everything else came in incidentally. The books I liked best under his teaching were Horace's Odes, Aeneid 4, and Euripides' Bacchae. I had always in one sense liked my classical work, but hitherto this had only been the pleasure that everyone feels in mastering a craft. And now I tasted the classics as poetry." I have to be careful when I read Lewis because I think he's so right that I can get carried away because I think he's right, but I just want to reread from him one more time. And I'm not going to make any comments. That's what I promised myself. I'm just going to let C.S. Lewis, because actually this summer I'm going to try to do a seminar on just Lewis in education. So anyway, I'll hold my comments for 6 months. All right, so he says, "In those days, a boy on the classical side officially did almost nothing but classics. I think this was wise. The greatest service we can do to education today is to teach fewer subjects. No one has time to do more than a very few things well before he is 20. And when we force a boy to be a mediocrity in a dozen subjects, we destroy his standards, perhaps for life." Just one more time. The greatest service we can do to education today is to teach fewer subjects. So, I'm going to let Lewis leave off at Lewis, and then go over to Cicero's. It's called Laelius because it's a dialogue where Laelius is the main character, but usually, it's funny, in English I feel like it's always known as De Senectute, which is on old age, or literally concerning old age. And so Cicero, at the kind of the preface, it's always a letter. He's always writing to a buddy of his. So this one's to Atticus, and we know that because in the second paragraph, I think he says he's writing and he says Attica. So he kind of throws out there's no like, "Dear Atticus, I've written to you," but in the course of him writing, he just kind of throws out Attica there, standing absolute in the vocative. Oops, sorry, standing absolute. So da 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 da, Atticus, da 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 da. So we know that Cicero is writing this particular dialogue on old age to Atticus, but he also wrote an earlier dialogue called Cato Major, Cato Major is on old age. This is on friendship. I apologize. Cato Major is the one that he's talking about here, but this is actually from De Amicitia, on friendship. So, seeing Cato messed me up. All right. So Cicero has already written a dialogue where Cato is the main speaker, and before he gets into his new dialogue, Laelius, he's kind of talking about, okay, how am I writing this, and who is Laelius? And so he's talking a little bit about Laelius' family tree and what we know about him, and how Cicero knew him, or knew of him, which is the man that he lived with who trained him to be a lawyer, named Scivula. Laelius is his father-in-law. So he kind of heard stories about Laelius from his son-in-law, and now he's presenting kind of these stories that he's heard as if he were there, and as if Laelius is there talking to his two sons-in-law, Scivula and Fannius is the other one's name. So anyway, so he's explaining, hey, I'm writing this, and I'm getting into how I'm composing this, and he says, just previous, he has told Atticus that how I'm going to write this is I'm not going to say, and then Laelius said, and then Fannius said, and then I said. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to present it as if I were there, and this will just be better. And it'll seem like, he says, "Videter habere sermo quorum I presentibus," which means it will seem as if the speech were being held right in your midst. So it's like you're in the middle of the dialogue. So this is even helpful if you're reading Plato's dialogues and you think, well, was Plato actually there for Socrates? Maybe not. And that doesn't seem to bother Cicero, and it probably doesn't bother most people. I think they kind of understand that you are reproducing, Cicero says, the sententias of the dialogue. The maybe not the exact words, but the ideas that were shared, and maybe you change the words a little bit. And this is important, obviously, when we read the New Testament as well. The New Testament writers, if you look at, say, the Gospel of Mark and Luke and Matthew side by side, you'll see differences of verba, but you will never see a difference of sententia. And so it's kind of a famous question in gospel studies is, did the gospel writers give you the exact verba, or did they give you the sententia, or the ipsissima vox is what it's called, the voice of Jesus, maybe not the exact words of Jesus. So Cicero, before this dialogue, kind of is saying the same thing. I know I've got the ideas right, but anyway, it may not be there. And the reason that I'm doing this is I want it to feel like you're there. Okay, so that's what Cicero said leading up to this sentence. And I wanted to highlight this sentence for two reasons. One is because it threw me, and two is because if I would have listened to my own rules for translating, it wouldn't have thrown me. And three is because we get a really cool use of ipsa here. So anyway, so we come to this, and it says, Itaque ipse mea legens sic ad ficior interdum ut caetonum non me laqui existimem. All right. So the first thing we always look for in a sentence is, or a clause, are verbs. Okay, so what verbs do you think you see?
Existimum.
Okay, existimum. It is nice. It's popping out here at the end. That, sure enough, is a verb. It comes from, and let's see, you should know what it's not. You will not know what it is, but you can tell me what it's not. It comes from existimare. Existimare. And we have existimem with an E. What is this not?
It's not an infinitive.
It's not an infinitive, yeah. It's not existimare or existimari.
But can't active verbs in the first person end in M sometimes?
They can. We've seen that with the imperatives, right? We've seen bum, boss, but. So yeah, we can see actually this is an active first person singular. And then the question becomes, what in the world is an E doing in a first conjugation verb? Well, what an E is doing there, you don't know yet, it's shifting it into the subjunctive. This is a present active subjunctive, and the only clue to it is that E. Okay? So we'll see that in future months, but that's the only change. But we can still use our reasoning to go, Okay, that looks like we've got an active first person singular, but that is a present active subjunctive first person singular from Existimo. It means I judge, or I reckon, I think. Like I estimate is related to the English. Okay. Any other verbs? I will tell you there are 3 other things that we could count as verbs up here.
I'm gonna stab. Edificior.
Adficior is a second verb. Adficior. And it ends in an R. It ends in an
Passive.
R. It is a passive what person and number?
First person singular.
Passive first person singular. So let's review here our endings. For our active endings, I'm going to switch to blue because I think it shows up better on the camera. But our active endings are either O or M, right? We might have either. Here we've got an M. So they're O, st, mus, tis, nt. Passive endings are r, ris, ter, mer, mini, and ter. Yeah. There they are. So I see this at the end, and adficio means, it literally means like I dispute, or I put off, I don't recognize.
So would it be I am not recognized?
Yeah, I am disputed, or I am like mixed up myself, and that's going to become clear what he's mixed up about. So we can see here that both of our verbs, these are the only conjugated verbs with person and number. Adficior, first person singular. Existimem, first person singular. One is active, one is passive. One is indicative, one is subjunctive. And since we haven't touched on the subjunctive, I'll also show you this. With the particle ut is used to express purpose or result. So here we actually have a result. So that it seemed, or so that I judged, I estimated. So this is a result clause. So that I judged. Okay, so that's the second thing. We have 2 more verbs. We have leganes, which is actually a participle. It's a present participle. And it comes from lego, legere. If your child's handwriting is illegible, it means you cannot read it. Leganes is a participle, meaning, present participle, meaning reading. And I know that this is nominative singular. It ends in NS. It's nominative singular. That works really nicely for English speakers. And then the other one we have is loqui. And this is a passive infinitive, present passive infinitive. Although here it's actually deponent. Don't let that freak you out. That's to come in the future. And this just means to speak. Like if you're loquacious, you talk a lot.
Is it infinitive?
It's an infinitive. It's a passive infinitive. But it's deponent. Again, don't just shove that out of your mind for a second. All right. So I want to ask the question, who is confused or who is disputing this?
Cicero?
I am. That's right. And Cicero is the one who's writing. So who is the one who's reading? If this is the nominative singular and Cicero, I, am the subject of the verb, who is reading? If this is nominative singular. Bust out your reasoning.
Cicero?
Cicero is the one who's reading. All right, and this is what's kind of screwy about this. So, oftentimes in Latin, they'll use participles where we would want a conjugated verb. So, for example, we'll do something in English, while I was reading. Well, that's as close as we get. And that's what's happening actually right here. Itaque means and so. And so, ipset mea legens. And here, Cicero uses his syntax to protect this clause. This is his first idea. And so, ipset mea legens, who is the one reading? I am. Cicero is. Right? So this first person singular carries over to this nominative singular, which means ipset is actually I. Now, usually when we meet ipse, we're kind of taught to think, oh, that means he, himself, or something. Here you have an example of where ipse is actually emphasizing I, and it makes sense actually in context. So what he's saying is, I wrote this book so that it would seem like you were actually in Cato's presence. And so, ipse mea legens, even when I was reading my own words. Even when I was reading my own words. Ipse mea legens. Sic adficior. Even I was confused. So I did such a good job writing this that when I was reading my own words, thus I was confused sometimes. Introduced means sometimes. Resulting in so that, or in so, I judged Catonum loqui. So I thought, or I judged
Cato to be speaking.
Cato to speak, non me.
Not me.
Not myself, yeah. So he's saying I did such a good job, and this mode of writing is so effective at kind of getting you into the dialogue, I forgot that they were even my own words and my own construction because I so realistically portrayed Cato as talking. So what messed me up especially was that use of ipse. I was like, so I first did, so that when someone is reading my words, thus I dispute sometimes, anyway. So this kind of trickle down of ipse being actually I, in an emphatic, I myself, I reading my own words, or I reading
Isn't
my
it
words.
usually ego, though, if you're going to do that?
Yeah, you could do, here he uses ipse, and kind of trust you to track it back.
Sorry, Maya, is that nominative feminine, or is that
No.
you're using it as accusative?
It's
Is
an
it because
accusative neuter
verba,
plural. Yes,
plural,
mea verba,
neuter?
yeah. Neuter plural accusative, my words.
So
Okay.
you're supposed to assume the words.
Yeah.
Okay.
So literally, you could plug in when I was reading my things, and so we kind of go, oh. So that's a very common use of the adjective, which is called a substantival adjective, or a substantive adjective. Adjectives that act like nouns.
This might be a weird question, but then if reading is acting like a noun, how do you know what gender it is?
It's not acting like a noun, it's a participle.
Okay.
So reading and participles, which we've kind of gotten into, and actually makes a nice transition.
Okay.
Participles are verbal adjectives.
Uh-huh.
Verbal adjectives. They're built off of verbs, lego, legeret, but they function like adjectives and match the noun that they modify in gender, case, and number. And present participles act like third declension adjectives. So legens is the X form. X is EMA. So legens, legenti, legentis, legenti, legentem, legente, legentes, legentibus. Where we see this in English is in the scientific nomenclature. Chris, I'm throwing this to you. The scientific nomenclature of humans.
Homo sapiens?
Thank you. Homo sapiens. Literally thinking man. These are both X forms, though.
Oh.
So homo hominis and sapiens sapientis. Both are the X forms. So thinking man. Here we have literally he, or the one reading in this case, but we have to learn that the one reading is the same one as the subject of adficior. So this is a tricky bit of a logic puzzle here. And that use of ipse, I'd never seen that before. So that's why I wanted to share it. Any other questions?
Can it mean myself? How do you know it means that?
Just because we want to bring in the emphasis in English. Like
Yeah.
even I, you could do it that way too. And so even I, when reading my own words, or
Yeah.
I myself when reading my own words, or something like that. At some point, there's only like so many I's or my's or myself's that we want in, in one clause.
Yeah.
So you have to pick, but it's definitely the emphatic,
Okay.
for sure. All right.
Fun stuff.
All right. That is real Latin. That is real Cicero. Unedited. Unmacroned even. All right. We are going to look then, first of all, were there any questions over the chapter 19 exercises? I set out the answer key. Is there anything that we could go over?
I'd love for you to do number 7 in the antique sentences.
Okay,
That was hard for me.
all right. Let's see here. Anything in particular that kind of threw you off that you recall?
I just wrote ouch next to it.
Okay. Well, it's good. Almost always, and maybe this is just because I was reading Mr. Bowditch before I came, you know, and he has that, like, it's a simple matter of mathematics, Captain, you know, and that's kind of Latin. It's usually when we're stuck, we probably just need to do more legwork, although we can always feel better about ourselves when we get stuck in Cicero. There are worse places to get stuck, you know, in Latin. It's kind of like saying I'm stuck in Shakespeare in English. And really, that's the closest comparison in English, the level of rhetoric and compositional style. Or reading, you know, the founders, when they're writing about politics, you know. It's just top-notch, advanced constructions. Oh my goodness, it'll throw you off. All right. Okay, so let's do the right thing. I'm preaching to myself here, having just been thrown by Cicero this afternoon. And grab our verbs of any type.
Parade, potterin.
Okay. Parunter, there's one. Patuerons, parare,
Sunt parata.
parata sunt. I think that looks like it. Okay, and what we can notice is if we kind of have eyes to see, we can see that each clause has one verb, except for the second clause that has two verbs. We have parare and patuerunt. What do we notice about one of our verbs? It's an infinitive, and it's an infinitive working with patuerunt. What do we know about the verb patuerunt? Comes from possum posse.
It's a perfect active.
Future.
Yeah, it's a perfect active indicative. What person and number? Patuerunt.
Third person.
Third person plural. It comes from possum, meaning I can or I am able. What do we know about that verb in English and in Latin?
It's like a helping verb kind of thing. I don't know what it
It needs a
is.
Infinitive.
It needs a complementary infinitive, yeah. So and when we figure that out, I always find like I'm solving things. You know, I haven't had the whole puzzle solved yet, but I've solved something, which is this is a perfect active indicative, third person plural from possum posse, meaning I am able. So we've got they were able, or they were not able to ready, or they were not able to prepare something. I don't know what it is, but we'll see. So we've kind of figured out then we've got a clause with a verb, a clause with a verb, a clause with a verb with a complementary infinitive. All right. So let's go to the top here. The first half of our sentence. Alia quae pecunia parantur ab eo stulta, parata sunt. All right. What is the subject of the verb parata sunt?
Well, it's passive, isn't it?
It is passive. So this is where our clues are going to have to come out. So I've got a passive, parata sunt. No observation is wasted. We'll just get more economic with our observations over time. So it's a passive. Can we figure out what gender or person and number we've got here?
Third person.
Okay, we've got a third person plural. What gender?
Feminine.
Is it neuter?
Sunt has to be neuter.
Wait a minute.
Look, parata. If it were feminine, it would be
an S? Like you'd have
it could be parata est, yeah. But if it were sunt, what would it have to be a feminine plural?
Paratai.
Paratai, yeah. So we actually can see here, without any question, that our subject noun has to be neuter plural. Has to be. Parata sunt. If it were feminine, it would be paratai sunt. So now we know, really without doubt, what's our subject noun. Or here, substantive adjective.
Alia.
Alia, yeah. Other things. Other things, because I know it's a neuter. Neuter plural. Other things. And again, this is a substantive or a substantival. Both words are acceptable. Substantival adjective. Other things. So let's just finish our subject and verb. Other things Careful, it's the perfect passive. Other things
Were prepared.
were prepared.
By. Is that. See, I was confused by that before
By it.
too. It's not a genitive, so how do you say his or him? Like,
You
but. By,
let
because it's an
Stulto lead.
adjective.
By
It's an. And how do you do
it's
that as an
basically
adjective?
working as a demonstrative.
His.
Oh, this?
By this fool.
Okay.
Other things were prepared by this fool. Eo Stulto.
Okay.
Okay? So it could be a pronoun, him, he,
That's what I mean.
but when it's
Okay.
working,
Okay.
when it's working with
Yeah.
another noun, we basically treat it as a demonstrative.
Thank you.
So other things were prepared by this fool. And what are the other things? Other things, quae pecunia paranter. So what is the antecedent of the relative pronoun quae?
Prepared.
Other thing.
Yeah, other things. So the antecedent of our relative pronoun, normal, right in front of it. And we need to look at, and I think they give us actually a little note, don't they, with paro in the passive. Oh no, they don't give it a separate note. They just show you that it's kind of got its own little family of meanings. To obtain or get. And we're going to use that kind of side of its meaning. Other things,
What was being gotten by money?
Which-
By money.
Which is being gotten by money.
which have been obtained by money, yeah, or which are obtained. This is actually a present.
Yeah.
Other things which are obtained by money, ablative of, obtained by money, gotten by money.
Ablative of agent.
Agent, good. Ablative of agent. Now, what is the key to understanding or to guessing correctly, which that's right. Not that that was a guess, but I just mean, how do I know that's an ablative of agent?
It has the macron over the A.
Okay, that tells me it's an ablative. It wouldn't tell me that it's an agent.
I'm missing another step. Like, I need who did it because it's a passive verb.
There we go. So the passive verb is the best guess, or is the best indicator here, that if you have an ablative right next to me, your first guess it should be an ablative of agent. So other things which are obtained by money were prepared, or now we can know probably were obtained by him. So here's where context helps us with our meaning, our range of meanings. So you're probably not going to, which were prepared by money. That doesn't make sense. So if Cicero's kind of using, now notice, repeating this verb 3 times, he could be playing with it, kind of shifting its meaning just a little bit, kind of playing a little, little irony game maybe. But probably it's safest to keep it the same for at least now. So other things which are obtained by money were obtained by this fool. It means the same thing as et. And mores, let's check myself.
Can I ask a question?
Mhm.
I know it seems stupid, but how do you know it's were obtained as opposed to have been obtained?
Actually, both would be acceptable. The hard thing here is, and actually you're probably best to put it as a true perfect, because we have a present context verb. So other things which are obtained by money have been obtained by this
So
fool.
that's
You're
not
right.
wrong.
You're
Okay.
right. Yeah, when we have a verb in the present tense, that'll drag the perfect up into that true perfect. Have been obtained, rather than just were obtained. So, good catch. Okay. And, mores eus veros amicos para non patuera. So here this is a hard but, actually.
Oh, mores can be nominative plural.
It is a nominative plural. Yeah, that's going to be our subject now.
And his morals were not able to obtain true friends.
Good, but his, and this is a tricky word, most can be like your habits, your customs, what you do, basically.
Okay.
So his habits, maybe, but yeah, the word moral comes from that. So his habits have not been able, if we want to keep that true perfect, have not been able to obtain true friends. So everything that he could get by money, he has now gotten. But he cannot get true friends because of his morals, the way he lives. Anything in particular kind of stand out there, Rose? Just the whole.
Yeah. It's just a hard.
It's a hard sentence. It is.
Well, the whole, like,
Yeah.
obtain even was hard,
Yeah.
like, cause if you get the wrong word, it doesn't make
Yeah.
sense, and then you're kinda like, what does
Yeah,
that mean?
because we ended up with like other things which were prepared by money,
I kept trying to say having done.
have been prepared by this fool, but his habits have not been able to prepare true friends. Yeah.
Seems weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. It does. If you don't kind of make that shift, and understandably why you wouldn't. All right. Well, let's go to the new chapter then. Like I said, almost all of this is review for us in a sense, but that's not said in like a, and if you don't have this mastered, then I don't know what you're doing. So again, chapters 20 and 21, we're kind of going to take them together since we've already touched on some of 21. So 20 just introduces two ideas. One is the fourth declension. So one thing I want to do is just talk about declensions real quick, a big picture idea. What is a declension?
Putting nouns in different cases.
Okay, so when we decline nouns and
Adjectives.
nouns and adjectives, and we could put participles in there if we wanted to, but since they're verbal adjectives, we'll count that. So nouns and adjectives, and we're changing their case and
To show what function they're going to have
Number.
in the sentence.
case and number. Okay, now to Chris's question, or Chris's comment, case does what?
The function of the word.
Shows the function of the word. Number shows,
How many people?
good, how many? Okay? So nouns and adjectives change their case to show function and number to show how many. That process is called declining. Literally means to like move it away from, decline. Our word is like incline or decline, same idea. All right. But what is a declension? So if the decline means to change the noun and an adjective, what is a declension? For example, a first declension. I, is, as, is, I.
The gender determining, does it have to do with gender?
It could, some of them do. For example,
It's
if
like
I see a noun that
first
goes
mention,
I, o, is, I know that's neuter. So the declension could show me gender, but think even in a bigger sense. What is declension? What is a declension?
Common patterns of endings.
There we go. It's a pattern or a family. Yeah, it's a pattern that the noun or adjective belongs to. So when we see a declension, all of our declensions, that's just straight memory work. You know, there's nothing fancy there. First declension, I. I'm not gonna write them all up. Second declension, masculine, us or e, o, e, or me, so, c. Second declension, neuter, e, o, or isa, isa. Third declension, masculine and feminine, x, is, e, x. Ace, ibus, ace. Third declension, neuter. X, is, e, x, ibus, Okay, so the big picture thing that I want us to see so far is that our first declension, almost all of the nouns in our first declension are feminine. There are a couple of exceptions for some male jobs, but they're almost all feminine. Our second declensions, us, e, or e, are all masculine and neuter. Our third declension pattern, x, is masculine and feminine and neuter. The fourth declension and the fifth declension, which shows up in chapter 25. The fourth declension is all masculine and neuter. And to round out this nice little pattern, look, feminine, masculine, and neuter, all three. Masculine and neuter, feminine, there you go. So it's a nice little pattern that just might help us remember, oh, if it's in the fifth declension, I think with one exception, dies. The fifth declension, it is feminine. If it's fourth declension, it's either masculine and neuter. If it's first declension, except for a few exceptions, it's feminine. And that can kind of help us when we're seeing words, sorry, I erased this as well. But when we're seeing words in sentences, we can kind of think, oh, okay, what gender am I most likely looking at? Third declension's the free-for-all. But otherwise, we kind of have more of an idea of what we're looking at. So for example, we had eo stulto in that previous sentence. Oops. Eo stulto. Well, this comes from stultus, stulti, second declension, masculine. So eo stulto, this fool. From this fool, or whatever, by this fool. All right, so the fourth declension, what characterizes it is the you. That is what I have my students say. Whenever they say fourth declension, I say the you. Because if you've ever seen an NFL game, any player who's come from the University of Miami says, when they do their little intros at the beginning of the game, they always say, so-and-so, so-and-so, the you. And that's just our favorite part of the football game, is whenever they say that they're from the University of Miami and say the you. So there you go. That has nothing to do with Latin whatsoever. All right, but you can kind of see why this is true. The masculine endings go us, ui, u, us, ibus, ibus. Us, if you want the nominative or vocative. Okay? So everywhere that, say, in the third had an I or an E, we have swapped it for a U, or we've added an additional U. Yeah.
It says,
Those are the neuters. If you flip to the top.
I know, but it says masculine or feminine, and you said it was just masculine and neuter.
It's almost all masculine.
Okay.
It's almost
So
all
ignore
masculine.
that.
So you can basically.
But
I mean,
can I ask a stupid question?
Yeah.
I know this seems like first week stuff, but like, when you say all first declension are feminine, like they still all end in I.
I.
It's just the feel of the noun, like agricola is like, you're calling that masculine, even though it's a...
Yeah, so it's,
Okay.
and that's where it's maybe important, and maybe nowadays it's really important to think about, okay, what is gender? I don't mean to get all like
No, I know.
crazy on everybody, but like,
yeah,
what is linguistic gender, right? So ships are always she's.
right.
There's not a feminine, I don't know, there's not a female attribute to a ship, I don't think, that have them being
But
she's.
you would call that a feminine noun.
It is a feminine noun, right? Because we use a feminine pronoun even in English.
Yeah.
So kind of the answer I would say is that there are some jobs, poet, sailor, farmer, actor, is that right? No, that's actor.
But why can't you call them feminine just because they have...
Pains,
They,
quota, agricola, incola, nauta, scriba.
scriba, that's the one.
Is that
You
feminine?
can't call them that because the adjectives will be feminine. And that's how you know. Kind of like, how do I know that spaceships are feminine? Because when she goes down, she goes down.
So the
The pronoun in that
for like
case.
agricola is a feminine?
No, it's a masculine.
Okay.
Yeah, so
That's
the
what-
adjectives and
okay.
pronouns will be masculine. So the one exception is manus, hand. And you can always remember this because who gets manicures?
Yeah.
Yeah, women is the correct answer. That's right. No, I'm just so anyway. Manus is the one exception to this.
Okay, got it.
But so it's funny that they even say masculine and feminine.
Yeah. it's-
Masculine and manus. Fair enough.
Okay, got it.
Okay. But otherwise, yeah, they're all masculine. So the fifth, when we meet it, it's the E. So although it's a little odder than that, but anyway, these will all have E's. That'll be in chapter 22. But sure enough, with our fourth declension, we actually get two kind of famous nouns. One is our Thanksgiving noun, the cornucopia, and that comes from the Latin cornus, which means horn. I just lost the other one. They don't come back. Oh, manus is another kind of famous one. Hand, manicure. Give me some sciencey things here, Chris.
Almost not.
Mandibles in your mouth. That doesn't work.
No. I would just see the sign in this bathrooms.
Lavas de los manos. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it comes right into Spanish too. Oh yeah, corn syrup. Yes, fruit, fructus. Yeah, so there you go. Everyone another blame the Romans, right? So anyway, so a couple of famous U derivatives that come to it, but otherwise it's or ooh. Sorry, ooh. Hello, ooh. No, I was right. Oh, I got freaked out because all the plurals are just in ooh. If you look at them, except for one, I think. So anyway, there's nothing new with the fourth declension except for just to notice when you see a us, or an us, that's a fourth. And you kind of have to know that pattern. So nothing special there grammar-wise. The other thing in chapter 20 that's new is they keep adding to our uses of the ablative. Uses of the ablative. And the two that they're going to give us here are ablatives of place from which and ablative of separation. So let's do a little bit of review of the case function in general, but then we'll get to the case function of the ablative. So let's start over here. We'll go with the nominative. What are the two functions of the nominative that we see?
Subject.
Subject and I am Batman.
Predicate nominative.
And predicate nominative. What is the use so far of the genitive, and really for all of your days in the genitive? You can always be safe with the preposition.
Possessive of.
Yeah, possessive or of. And I'm going to put of as the main category. But yeah, possession is kind of the only one that we've really seen so far. His habits. We just saw. Mores eus. His habits. I've not let him buy true friends. Dative. I think only one use so far, the dative.
Indirect object.
Indirect object. To whom is the direct object given, or whom is being impacted by the direct object. Accusative, I think we have two so far.
Direct object.
Direct object is the first one. The verb is acting on it. I hit the ball. What's the other one?
Like, sometimes the prepositions have plus accusative.
Yeah, the OP. So anytime we see a preposition that says plus accusative, that means that my object must be in the accusative. Ad cusum. Okay. Ablative, we're going to get to in just a second. The sixth case, there is a seventh, I'll tell you, hiding, but we have not met him yet. He is still hiding. The vocative is used for?
Address.
Address, good. Yeah, literally calling on, right? But my friend Atticus, as I write to you, okay, ablative. So when we first meet the ablative, we just learned as the OP. So any preposition that says plus ablative, plus ABL, we know, oh, okay, I take my object in the ablative. But we saw with the passive, one use of the ablative that's very common with passive verbs, which is the ablative of?
Agent.
Agent, yeah. And what is an agent? An ablative of agent.
Who performs the thing?
Performs what?
The action of the verb.
What verb?
The passive verb.
Good. So the agent performs the passive verb. Performs the passive verb. Does the passive verb, right? The ball was hit by Johnny. Johnny is the agent. Okay. I can't recall. Have we gotten into ablatives of time? Did they do those yet? They did do those. Okay. Which, by the way, we can remember an accusative of time, by the way. Accusative of time duration. Tells you for how long something is done. So for 3 days, he ran from Greece to Italy. He didn't do it in 3 days, by the way. But anyway, let's just say he did. For 3 days, accusative of time duration. We also have ablatives of time when, and ablative of time within, or within which. So let's see here. What do you think an ablative of time when tells you? At 9:24, John asked the question.
He'll be done by 9 o'clock.
No. At 9:24, he asked the question.
So
Well, don't think of these as prepositions. They don't have to have the preposition. It just tells when. That's all. It tells.
symbol.
It tells when. Yeah. But both of these, don't overcomplicate them. Time when tells you when something happened, when the verb happened,
So,
when the verb occurred. So, for example, Cicero says, I'm setting up this dialogue based on a conversation that happened. Actually, sorry, that's the next one. Sorry. The next one. Time within which?
Is it like within 3 days?
In 3 days. Yeah, within 3 days. So it tells the time within which whatever the verb is, right? The verb happened. So Cicero says, this conversation happened, oh my goodness, what's his word? It's diebus, it's like a few days. Paukis diebus. Yeah, there we go. Paukis diebus. Diebus is a fifth declension, so the E. Paukis diebus, ablative, in a few days. Post mortem Scipionem, after the death of Scipio. So he doesn't tell us, he doesn't say in Paukis diebus. He just puts it Paukis diebus. Now let's ask that important question again. What in the world is cueing that I would bring up? One, the ablative. Yes, it's in the ablative. But why would I guess ablative of time within which? What is keying me to that?
Context.
Okay, anything specific in the context? Like in what I've written right there.
Endings.
Okay, it's in the ablative. Well, all that tells me is the ablative. So all that would bring up is like a list of options.
I was just looking at the context. I have no idea.
How about it diebus? It means
Oh,
day.
time.
Yeah, it's a time word. So anytime I have a time word, that is the best clue. Year, day, month, hour. These kinds of words all, and anytime I see them, I know I've got some kind of time category being used. And it can't be a time when, because look, you couldn't make this a time when. Add a few days? Yeah, it's got to be in a few days. Within a few days, yeah. So once we kind of see a word that would indicate time, now I know. Now this is keying me in that I've got some kind of a time category. Then I can see that it's an ablative, so I'm down into this list of time, and then I could just try, is that a time when? Add a few days time? No, it's in a few days. Within a few days, he has this conversation. Okay, we're adding, I don't think we've had any more, we're adding two more to our list of ablatives. The one is the ablatives of place from, and I'm actually going to add an extra one, because there's another place category. So we're going to do place where, place from, and one of the most popular, most often used, the ablative of separation. Ablative of separation. So, does anyone want to take a guess on what one of these might mean? If I see that word in the ablative. Place where?
By.
Place from. Okay, by or at. Yeah, exactly. So place where would just tell you where you are. So you could be at home or at the market, and in Latin you could just drop foro into the ablative. You know, I was in the forum. Foro. Okay? So place where, it simply tells where. Whatever the action is, right? How about place from, or place from which?
Going from Italy, you're leaving a place.
Yeah, so you're moving away from a place. You're moving from it. It could also be used, though it's slightly different, with ablative of origin, which is where you are from. For example, Jesus
Of Nazareth.
of Nazareth. Yeah, that could be put in the genitive. Could also be put in the ablative. Jesus from Nazareth, like literally left, from Nazareth. So this is used as leaving a place. Tells where you've left. They marched from Italy to Greece. What case would you guess that Greece would go into?
Accusative.
Yeah. So if you want to, you could even put, just to kind of keep it straighter or maybe help you by contrast, the accusative has another category, which is the accusative of place, or it's sometimes called motion, to, towards.
Aren't there some things like small towns and islands or something that you just put it in the accusative? It means you're going toward it.
That's right. Yeah, so
What is it?
towns do not take prepositions at all. Like, never, except for in vulgar Latin. So they, if you're saying you're going to a place, you would just drop it into the accusative. If you're leaving a place, you would put it into the ablative. Now let me ask this. How would I know whether this is the place where something is happening versus leaving a place? What do you think?
Which preposition?
I just feel like day is what you like out of. Is that
Okay, but how would you know? Because there are no prepositions. This is just an ablative in the case. The answer is context, of course, but specifically, what in context would tell you?
What if you're like if the verb is moving somewhere?
Yeah, movement is the key.
Oh.
Movement is the key. If you're leaving a place, what might their verb be?
Go or
Yeah, go from, usually, like abeontes. And so going from wherever, and so your verb will often have, the verb will actually often have the prefixed preposition abeontes, going away. Or progredior means walking towards. So walking towards Capernaum, Nazareth, leaving Nazareth and going towards Capernaum, he crossed the lake or whatever it is.
And so you just kind of, when you translate that into English, you have to like add those.
You
little-
do add the prepositions, yeah. Which is another important idea is when we're translating, we're almost never doing verbatim translation. It just very rarely will that get you anything close to beautiful. And even anything close to English, honestly, right? Because, I mean, you could work it where it's like, leaving Nazareth, Capernaum. That doesn't make any sense. Like, we need something there to help us out. So yeah, leaving from Nazareth to Capernaum, but we almost sometimes even add a second verb. Or from Nazareth, or going from Nazareth, he journeyed to Capernaum or something.
do you use ambulo or navigo?
Say again.
Ambulo or navigo?
Oh, it's like your verbs for leaving?
Yeah.
It
that
could,
word.
yeah, it would, yeah. And there again, you'd have, usually, if you're leaving, oftentimes, when you're leaving, you're going to have one in the ablative, leaving it, one in the accusative going towards it. And so that's another way you can tell that, we're not just staying in a place, we are leaving a place and going to a place. Setting out from Nazareth. Okay.
But if they live, they might
Right.
live
in
where?
Bethlehem.
Okay,
Right. That's
okay.
exactly right. So they live, certain verbs, speaking at the house, da da da. So verbs of movement, you could go either way, but I would guess this first if it were a verb of movement. I would guess they're leaving a place if it's a movement verb, rather than like walking around in a place. But technically it could be this, but it's, the smart money is on separation. Okay. Or sorry, place from, which leads us to why separation can be tricky. So the ablative of separation is very close, and honestly, some grammars will even teach it as the same, at least for location. So they give a definition, and I'll read their definition here. The ablative of separation, as the terminology suggests, implies only that some person or thing is separated from another. There is no movement involved in this. So you can kind of say, well, that's kind of fine slicing that just a little bit, and it is. But the idea of separation would be taking 1 from 5. There it is. You've pulled the 1 out of the 5. So subtraction is communicated, for example, with the ablative, which we want to do. Okay?
We're going to start teaching our math class.
We are, yeah. Well, hey, principio, right? Let's just go big, right? So, anyway, here you have a good example. Cicero kept the enemy urbe, from the city. So separation just communicates almost, I hate to say distance, because then that kind of starts to sound like this, but they're pretty finely sliced here. This one is a location, whereas this one is not necessarily leaving a place, but we could say keeping two things apart, or keeping a thing apart is maybe a good way.
But John, in that sentence, Cicero hostis ab urbem misit, like there's ab, so it does have.
It is.
Okay, but it's not always gonna.
It is. It won't always have it. Yeah, and that's the tricky thing is for a lot of these, for right now where we are, we will see and x and in and things like this that are going to help us right now. But they'll start to kind of pull them, bit by bit. They'll kind of pull them out, and you'll start to realize. It's pretty rare. I feel like I'm like 5 paragraphs into Cicero, and I don't think I've seen a preposition in front of an
They
ablative
take away the
yet.
macrons, they take away.
And then macrons are gone, and the prepositions are gone. Yeah, and so at that point, they're just relying on you to basically, as a reader, kind of know your categories. Which I always wonder, did the Romans have these categories
Like
in their head,
or
or are
do
they
it
just intuit it? Yeah.
And we've set it down in a.
Right. We codify it so that we can get in from the outside, but did they just know it,
Well,
or the Greeks nowadays?
the curriculum that I've taught, they use the words by, with, and from.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes if I just substitute, like if I see something in the ablative and I just think by, with, or which one might work there, and a lot of times one of them might work.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. You
So-
can plug them in by, with, from, in, at.
That's
Yeah.
more like a guessing
It is,
thing
it
of
is.
which fits in
It
this
is.
context than really knowing your different
Yes,
kinds.
yes, and this is where for our kids, we want them to be equipped with the actual categories, because you really can guess. Or I had a professor who he was German, and he was a German of a German of a German, and he would always call that kind of stuff. He always called it punting. Like he said, if you come across a genitive and you don't tell me what it is clearly, you're punting. Because you're passing on to your reader who doesn't have this skill the work. You need to tell them what is that of actually communicating. When you say Jesus of Nazareth, let's get real about it. It's Jesus from Nazareth. His hometown is not, so you as the interpreter, the translating interpreter, you are the one who knows much more than kind of Joe Schmo Bible reader. And so you've got to be the one to guide them rather than punt to them. Because you may get it wrong, but you at least have a little more training than what kind of your average Christian in the church does. So that he kind of influenced me a lot. And because that's how grammar is done, whatever, at college or grad school or whatever, that's how it's done. So it kind of works nice.
And it's important. I mean, like the difference between ablative of means and ablative of accompaniment. They both can use a with, but it's a different kind of with.
Right, yeah. With great force versus with a hammer versus with a friend.
Yeah.
Those all three, and that's the essence, I feel like, of what Lewis is talking about.
Yeah.
Just the idea that with can mean how you're doing something. He did it with gusto, or what you're using with a hammer, or with whom something is being done with a pal.
And it means very different
And those are
things.
very different things. That's right.
Is it correct that you'd more often use a cum with an ablative of accompaniment than with ablative of means?
Yes.
It's more often just in the ablative?
In the ablative or with an yeah,
Okay.
I have seen that with an or an
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, anyway, so that's where these kind of categories, even though, one of my closest friends, he hates these categories. He actually dropped our master's program because he just was like, this is ridiculous. And it was like, well, it kind of is, but it actually really helps you to analyze it very carefully and closely, and even maybe to come to the place as a reader where hey, I think it could be, whatever. It could be this or this, but I'm aware of these options. And your option, this one is out. That is not what it could be. It's one of these, and that really can matter a great deal when it comes to interpretation of meaningful texts, I think, I would argue. And anyway, so that's it for this week. It's not a whole lot of new anything at all. But
20.
just 20. But if you want to, you can look at chapter 22 as well. Because all the chapter 22 only adds the fifth declension, so just those endings, and the ablative of place where, which I already put up here, and then just gives a summary of ablative uses. So it's a chapter that's pretty quick, and it gives you those. So you can check those out. They are pretty helpful, quick chapter. And then chapter 21, which we'll do next Monday. Chapter 21, we're going to review the entire present and perfect systems, active and passive indicative, for conjugations 1 through 4. So that sounds maybe overwhelming, but the cool thing is after that, that's it. That's all of the indicative.
We already do that.
We did that 2 ago, but I think it's probably worth it to get a little bit more practice into it. But yeah, you might kind of come away going, all right, I feel comfortable in this, or I really don't feel quite comfortable before we launch off into chapter 23, where we get participles. So that'll be a good kind of like wrap it up, especially since we're meeting again next week.
We are literally meeting next
Yeah,
week.
we're gonna meet next week. Yeah, so it'll kind of let us wrap it up, kind of bring it
1 week, kind of.
bring it up, and then you'll have a month to kind of say, all right, I'm going to close the book, or at least refine the book on this stuff before we get into participles. And then it's just
I
subjunctive.
took it off because I was like,
Okay.
surely we won't meet 2 weeks in a row.
Right.
I don't know what's usual for you guys.
Once a month.
Usually it's once a month, yeah, so this is a weird one.
This is the remedial class.
Anything, Russ or Kate?
So we'll see you on the 25th.
Yeah, see you next week.
Okay.
All right, see you guys.
Chris and I actually did decide
Bye-bye.
like we need more because like it's really hard
It
if you only go a month.
Yeah.
Like once a month, it's
I
really,
think
really,
so.
really hard.
That's yeah.
My brain like takes like an hour to rewarm back up
Yeah.
to thinking about Latin,
Yeah.
and then I forget everything I've like studied.
I mean, once a week is hard.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's very
yeah.
tough.
So
Oh, yeah.
a month, I can't imagine trying to remember everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, the best you could probably do is like
Yeah.
5 sentences a week, kind of at the minimum, because it's just,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it is hard.
John, I didn't mean that the book doesn't teach those categories that for the kids that I teach in the other book. I just meant like maybe that's sometimes in English we speak in categories that we don't know what the terms are.
Uh-huh.
I guess I was kind of getting at that maybe. Like they start out by what from, but then
Right,
they start
right.
teaching like, well, this is ablative of meanings,
Yes,
this is
yes,
ablative of
yes.
this is this ablative, and they
Yes.
start introducing all
Yeah.
those.
Yeah, and I
Definitive
think,
of origin or
and that's,
yeah,
at
of
the beginning,
material.
I think a lot of books do that, and they just basically treat it as OP, and then they eventually start saying, all right, there are times where you don't see a preposition
I
there.
just think of it
What
in
is that
terms of
gonna
like,
be?
could it be to this,
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
this? That's the way I don't think of it in terms of those. I think
Yes.
of it in terms of what could be the.
Mhm.
Kind of the meaning, or
Yeah.
how it works. And it's honestly, it's something that it takes a pretty long time, and then even I would say it takes getting to text that you really, really care about. Because for example, if I'm reading Cicero or whatever, it's pretty rarely gonna like make or break an issue. But like right now, I'm translating through this book called it's on why so and so is a heretic, and I can't remember the sentence. Pelagius, why Pelagius is a heretic. So it's written by a guy who's what's called a semi-Pelagian. So
Yeah.
he's not Augustinian. I have a friend who's writing his dissertation on it, and so I'm translating this section for him. And slight case misuse could result. I realize this is still recording. But anyway, it could be a huge deal, And so
Yeah.
that's where